And hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster in Lebanon, Connecticut. So pleased to be joined tonight by my partner in crime on so much, Ken Vecchio. We're both with Quick Hits News, and this is a special edition of Quick Hits News. Ken, are you afraid to fly at all?
I've never really liked the fly, but I wouldn't say I'm afraid to fly. I'm just kind of middle of the road about it. I'd rather drive if I can, but if I have to fly somewhere, I will. So I suppose there are a lot of people like me. I guess at the end of the day, I really don't mind it all that much. So
What if
there's
you
a
looked out your
complete mixed
window?
review.
If you looked out your window and saw what we have on our screen right now, which is the right engine on United Flight 328, a 777. It was leaving Denver, and a few minutes after takeoff, the engine exploded. As you can see, it was still on fire. The pilot miraculously, I think, miraculously, in any case, he was able to guide the plane back to Denver International Airport and made a safe landing. Everybody was fine. What would go through your mind if you looked out the window and saw this?
It certainly looks like a very harrowing experience, and it would incite me to not want to fly even more than the usual middle of the road type of scenario that I think I have and many people have.
Yeah, the part of the engine, by the way, landed in somebody's front yard. We'll put that picture up. And this is what the plane. They lose a couple of pictures here. Yeah, I mean, they were lucky that it landed in the front yard and not on the house, because if it landed in the house, there were people inside who would have killed them. It did smash a car, apparently, or a pickup truck. And this is what the airplane looked like from the ground when people were sort of looking up, taking pictures of it and using enhanced photography to get this. It is just a wild. I'm just surprised. And, Ken, the only look, I'm shocked for two things. First of all, I'm amazed that the pilot is able to keep it together, as pilots are trained to do in these situations, and be able to guide it safely. Cool as a cucumber, good for him. But the idea that passengers would not be shaking like a leaf and would be able to get video out their window as smoothly as this one passenger did, I just find as miraculous. Any idea or any suppositions as to why United has not yet released the name of this hero pilot from United 328?
I don't know. A lot of strange things have been happening in our country over the last year, so nothing surprises me at this point. Big corporate America has done some oddball things. It might be just something to the extent of they're doing some kind of internal investigation. If I'm just going to try to put on a legal hat, which I suppose you ultimately asking me to do, is that there's likely some type of internal investigation that's happening to try to determine if what the pilot knew, when he knew it, how he knew it, who the pilot may have spoken to, other people that were involved with the airline that were on that plane. And that's probably the only reason. The guy does sound, I don't like to use the word hero loosely. I've always been opposed to it. I don't think that people are heroes because they put on a robe or they put on a uniform. Meaning, like, people aren't automatically heroes because they're firemen or they're judges or they're police officers or any of those types of things. You're heroic if you do something where you put your own life in jeopardy in order to save others. This is not a circumstance where the guy was putting his own life in jeopardy. However, he's kind of in a heroic state to me by handling things how you defined it, by handling matters in a very cool and calculated manner. He very likely saved people's lives by the way he responded to this. So that makes him pretty much heroic to me.
I'm right there with you. And by the way, we're talking Ken Vecchio. We're on through Chaps, YouTube, Twitter, all the rest. People want to say hello from St. Petersburg. Ken, great to see you on. David Schuster, that's from Mark. Hello from Los Angeles. That's Mark. Peter. Lots of your fans, Ken, are out there. Ken, I want to ask you about politics. You and I have been talking politics for years. You're a Republican strategist in addition to being a former judge, lawyer, prosecutor, defense attorney. And you've had some interesting things to say, good and bad, about Donald Trump through the years. It does appear that Donald Trump is going to be the lead speaker at the CPAC conference this coming weekend. That is the highest profile Republican conservative political conference there is. What do you make of it? What's the opportunity? What's the downside, if there is one, for Donald Trump essentially taking the preeminent role at CPAC?
Well, pretty much I've had 100% good things to say about Donald Trump since he's entered the political world. That doesn't mean that every single policy that Donald Trump has been behind that I agree with. There are a few that have came down the line that I did not agree with. However, the vast majority of his policies I agree with. I'm also not one of those Republicans who dislikes his demeanor. I actually like his demeanor a lot. I think his firebrand is exciting and it woke up a lot of people. Donald Trump is still affirmatively the 100% leader of the Republican Party, whether certain plastic politicians like it or not. 99% of regular Republican voters like Donald Trump and are behind him. Of course, I don't have the exact figure, but if I look at the sum total of everything that's in my wheelhouse, which includes not only listening to mainstream media and mass media, but listening to just ordinary people speak, I've almost never come across a Republican in all of my professional and private travels who are not supportive of Donald Trump. So him being the lead speaker at CPAC makes total sense to me for both Donald Trump and for the Republican Party if the Republican Party wants to stay together.
Well, speaking of staying together, there's this poll that just came out that said something like 45% of Republicans would leave the party if Donald Trump formed his own new party. Is that something that would be wise for Donald Trump, for the conservative movement in general, or do you think it's better for somehow the GOP to somehow try to maintain its unity with or without Donald Trump?
Number one, who really says that Donald Trump wants to leave the Republican Party other than people who are trying to create controversy within the Republican Party? And that may be some Republican leaders themselves. And it also obviously may be people from the other side of the aisle. Number two,
and the media. The
media. And absolutely the media. Absolutely the media. Because they're loath to exist without Donald Trump. Number two, I don't believe polls anymore. Polls are like crazy. They do not accurately depict the truth if you follow at least presidential politics. So anything a poll says, I start off not believing. I don't believe that only 45% of Republicans would leave the Republican Party and go with Donald Trump to another party. I think the vast majority of them would. I don't think it's a good idea, though, to break off and have a new party because it will take a while for that to coalesce. And we've got midterms that are coming up and Republicans who believe that election results are still fair. And I'm one of those people who obviously had a lot of questions about the election results that happened. I'm willing to believe that Joe Biden won the presidency fair and square if and upon ultimately getting all the evidence out there. So right now, it seems to me that there's a lot. I don't want to divert too long in this. It seems like there's still an overwhelming amount of evidence that shows that there was widespread election and voter fraud. I think that it all is being ultimately placed out there where people can feel like, okay, there's not some major conspiracy theory and Joe Biden stole this election. There is, let's get real here. There's a chance that the election results were wrong, but there's also a chance that the election results are right. And I think we're soon really going to know that for certain. If it all comes out that it's, that he won the election fair and square, I think every reasonable person should just accept him as president and focus on winning in the next couple years. So that I just wanted to lead into that there is this predecessor issue going on, a threshold issue that there are tens of millions of Americans right now that are still concerned gravely that we might not be getting fair elections. Let's say, for argument's sake, that we're going to get fair elections. I think you think they are. I went out of my way, David. I just want to take 1 second on this, if you give me a moment. I went out of my way to actually pick up the phone and call several people who I consider moderate Democrats or independents. And I laid out all of this information to them that they already know. And I said, are you afraid that we're heading straight into communism and aren't going to have fair elections? And all of them said they're not afraid. So that made me a lot more comfortable. So I'm willing to start to accept that Joe Biden may have won this presidency squarely and fairly.
I'll reiterate, we are not headed towards a communism. I don't even think we're headed towards socialism. I mean, a lot of the progressives in the Democratic Party are infuriated right now because Joe Biden has not. I mean, look, with Democrats having the majority of the Senate, they could, if they wanted to, change the filibuster rules, jam through with just 51 votes, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, doing things like, passing COVID relief, making DC a state, whatever it is that is on the progressive wish list. And there are a number of items that are there. A lot of those progressives are mad at Joe Biden that he hasn't sort of stuck it down Republicans' throats and jammed it through. Does it give you hope as a Republican who is trying to look at perhaps some unity in the country that Joe Biden is seeming to go slow and at least trying to give time for Republicans to perhaps coalesce and figure out where there might be some common ground?
You know what? I have to tell you this, David. You just made me feel a lot more comfortable because anybody that's been listening to us for the last multiple years knows that although we agree on some things, as you said many times, there are a lot of things that we don't agree on politically. But I respect you. I respect your logic and your rationale. And hearing you say that as somebody who I consider, fairly liberal in his politics, makes me feel a lot more comfortable. And so I've said this to people personally many times, and publicly I've said it, that I want to give Joe Biden a chance on all these issues. I want to see that there's going to be no more lockdowns. I want to see that we're going to go back to basic normality. And there's a lot of issues of matters that, of course, we're greatly concerned about as Republicans, like immigration and healthcare and so forth. But I think it's the things like the lockdowns and the taking away the constitutional rights that have gotten Republicans most upset and most concerned. And hearing you describe things that way, here and seeing what Biden's doing, and it's giving us mixed messages as Republicans what he's doing, really. That I just feel like I want to give a chance before we rush to judgment that we are going in this, path that everybody's really concerned about.
Now, the irony is that while Republicans perhaps may be satisfied for now that Joe Biden is giving Republicans in Congress a chance to see if there's any sort of common ground, you've got the liberal wing of the Democratic Party, which is infuriated and steamed and feel like Joe Biden should just be passing whatever they want. And yet there are some Democratic centrists as well who are giving Biden some credit for holding off on some of the progressive wish list right now and trying to see if the environment in Washington can change. One of the things that you referred to, the environment in Washington still remains dominated by COVID-19 and concerns about the path forward and the rollout of the continued rollout of the vaccination process. The United States just passed 500,000 fatalities in less than a year. That's more than the United States lost in terms of Americans lost during the entirety of World War II. What do you make? What's your reaction, Ken, to sort of where we are with the pandemic and where things are going?
Well, this is something assuredly we're not in agreement on. I think that the lockdowns are the worst, one of the 2 or 3 worst things that have happened in the history of the United States. I believe by all the data that I've assessed, and I've assessed a lot of data on this, looking at medical doctors' reports, scientists' reports, studies, that the lockdowns have been a tremendous travesty, first and foremost, in the way of deaths that they've caused from non-coronavirus related problems. Significantly more people, by all the data that I've researched, have died due to the lockdowns that are unrelated to the coronavirus, from people who are too afraid to go to medical doctors, from people who can't go get surgeries like hip replacements, joint replacements, brain surgeries, people who are committing suicides at greater rates, greater drug overdoses, domestic violence. You add it all up, it's a horrible consequence. Also, the constitutional rights that have been taken away and the devastation to the economy. I believe from all of the data that I've reviewed that the coronavirus is factually, as no opinion, has a lower death rate than the flu. I concur that it spreads potentially faster, but it has a lower death rate than the flu, and nothing in society should change because of the flu, the coronavirus, or anything like that. And we have to go into a different direction. We have to know that it's here. We have to deal with it, and that there's a survival rate that's over 99% in cumulative nature. So I think that people have been, the fear has been weaponized in a horrendous way. I believe it was done for political reasons. I do believe the coronavirus is real. I believe that it's something that passes from person to person, just like the flu does. I just feel that we have to deal with it, and we have to end the hysteria. The hysteria is what's causing the much greater harm to our society.
Look, I'll agree with you on the hysteria point, and I do think that the hysteria has caused so many problems. You and I, of course, disagree in terms of the nature of COVID and how it compares to the flu and whatnot. But to your point, I mean, there's Anthony Fauci saying, look, if we're really going to wipe this out, not only does everybody need to get vaccinated, but also we need to continue wearing masks for at least the rest of this year because of how this thing spreads. Is that perhaps maybe a good idea, given that even something like the flu, which could be stopped by people wearing masks, that if we can get people used to, at least for now, for the next 8 months, whatever it is, okay, people want to go outside and resume their normal activities, but wear a mask, whether it's flu season or COVID season, and see at least what happens.
No, I am wholly and totally opposed to any mask mandates. Again, every study that was issued 2020 and prior, including for the coronavirus itself and all respiratory diseases, concluded that masks do nothing to stop the spreading of coronavirus or of the flu or of any of those types of respiratory illnesses. And I believe that the masks are being used as a symbol, and they're being used to also, I think, in a sidewinding good way to help make people feel better. But I wish masks work, but they don't. I've watched videos with my own eyes of medical doctors taking in a vape and just breathing normally with particles that are bigger than the coronavirus, and they come out the mask, below, through the masks, through the sides, and out the top. I put that together with every study and with what Anthony Fauci said immediately, that there's no reason to wear masks. And I conclude that they're completely unnecessary, and they're symbolic of the overall lockdown nature. So I don't agree with that. I do agree, though, that people should be washing their hands a lot. I do believe that if people want to wear masks, it's their right. If they feel better wearing them, go ahead and wear them. I think the vaccine is a good thing. I'm not sure myself if I would take it or if I would want my family to take it. I'm open-minded to assessing it. I do think that for people who want to take it, it's a great thing. I believe that it's working. I can tell you, I'm in Florida. You feel like you're in a different country when you live in a place like Florida or Texas or 35% of the states across the country. Nobody even talks about the coronavirus here. You wouldn't know that there was an alleged pandemic going on unless you watch the news. Like, there's nothing in society that's indicative of it. So I think of the totality of all this, and the numbers in Florida are significantly less than most of the numbers across the country, and it's been open nonstop. And you look at other states with the same thing. So I just feel like we just got to pull back from all this stuff and just let nature take its course, and people just go back to completely normal in society. I think it's best for our country if we do that. And I think Joe Biden will end up being a hero to 85 to 90% of America in not too long of run if he just pulls back on all this stuff and doesn't double down on it.
In terms of the legalities, though, I mean, to your point, I mean, people are free to wear a mask, and businesses, if they want, can say, look, you come into our grocery store, we have our policy, you got to wear a mask. Just like if we say no shirt, no shoes, no service, we can require you to wear a mask. Same thing for airlines if they want to require people to wear masks. In other words, you can choose, I suppose, not to wear a mask in certain public spaces. But in terms of being in private business, that business owner gets to determine what he or she wants in terms of their customers. Is that correct?
There's a famous scene that I love in Fast Times at Ridgemont High when Sean Penn, playing Jeff Spicoli, walks into a little luncheonette that Judge Reinhold is serving food at, and he says, "No shirts, no shoes, no service." Your exact line. I absolutely agree that private industry is private, and if an airline wants to dictate that people wear masks, if you want to get on that plane, you wear a mask. If you don't want to wear a mask, then don't get on the plane. So if a private business dictates it, barring things like where you have to get necessities like food, where even the mandates that are issued by the various states allow for exceptions on that for people not to wear masks. But if any private business wants that, that's their decision. I'll put on a mask if I want to go into a place and they absolutely want you to wear a mask. I'll put it on.
Ken, a lot of people may not realize that in addition to your legal career and politics, you are also a producer and actor in many films. You put on the Hoboken International Film Festival, one of the largest, and I think one of the best in the world, just because I've been to it, and it's awesome, the number of VIPs. How has COVID impacted movie making for you and for your colleagues, and what do you see happening ahead in terms of the rebound?
Look, thank you for itemizing. My careers are split between law and the entertainment world, and law has functioned perfectly fine. It's been a completely stable business for me, by the way, for the entirety of my legal career since I graduated from law school, and it's been stable through this entire last year, and I believe it will be ongoing. The entertainment industry has not, though. I have not been able to hold my Hoboken International Film Festival because every event in the country has basically been canceled. I do believe that I will be able to initiate it and get it off the ground very, very easily in a place like Florida if I so choose to hold it here. I think that it'll be welcomed with open arms. And in fact, I know it will be because I've had multiple discussions already and I'm determining what to do. As far as filmmaking, yeah, that's been impacted as well. You see the poster behind me over here. I'm probably turning in the wrong direction. There's my son on the cover, right? A Wrestling Christmas Miracle. Well, we shot that movie right before all of this hit in January of 2020. It was released in November of 2020, but we shot it before that. I have not made a movie since then. So that gives you some kind of indication of what has transpired in the entertainment world. And I'm a guy that, quite honestly, I've made over 30 movies in the past like 20, 21 years. And so I've made more movies than the vast majority of filmmakers in Hollywood. I'm nowhere near as big of a player of like a Quentin Tarantino or a George Lucas or something like that. But I've made some pretty sizable movies that star several Academy Award and Emmy winners and nominees that are distributed through the likes of Sony Pictures, Lionsgate, NBC Universal to mid-sized companies. So, I've been out there doing this nonstop, and I haven't been able to get anything together in the last year. The industry is happening. It is still going and it's progressing. My son is as a child actor. That's a fairly well-known one. He's recently gotten some pretty sizable auditions. So things are coming back into play, but it's slow, like many other industries.
And what do you see happening? I mean, do you see everything in terms of the timeline, a realistic timeline, whether, maybe not necessarily as quickly as you want, maybe also not as slow as some people fear? What do you see in terms of a realistic timeline for whether it's entertainment or office buildings getting back or basically society returning to some sort of normal? What's the timeline that you see?
It's more of what I'm hopeful of. I think that I'm being very realistic about it. Nothing surprises me anymore about what's occurred during the entirety of this hysteria. So, again, in trying to give Joe Biden the benefit of the doubt and give him a chance in trying to bring America back to normal, I'm hopeful that by the summer and certainly by the next school year, that things can be back to basically normal. And I think there's like a 50-50 shot of it happening in that timeline. We're getting so many mixed messages out there. If you watch one side of the media, you're getting one set of ideas. If you're listening to another side of the media, you're getting a different set of ideas. If you talk to one group of politicians, one set of ideas, another group of politicians, another set of ideas. So what do you think?
My thought, and I'm going to probably go out on a limb here. I do think that, the numbers are down in terms of new infections, I think 44% over the past 2 weeks. The number of daily deaths down to about 1,200, which is, again, that's also down about 50% over the past 2 weeks, which was down from the 2 weeks previous. So my sense is that things are really, I have a feeling that more people had COVID-19 than any of us realize, and that we're a lot closer to what they call herd immunity than anybody really can imagine. And so there was a guy who appeared, I believe it was on Fox a couple of days ago, predicting that, this all may be over by April. I'm not sure it's going to be that fast because I think even if the numbers continue to drop, it's going to take people, I think, several months to sort of trust in the numbers and trust that things are sort of getting back to some sort of routine. But I'm with you. I think that by the summer, I'd like to think that by July 4th, for example, people can go back to the beaches and have the barbecues and everything else. And there will be some communities where just because it makes them feel better, people are going to say, okay, wear a mask because we still need those precautions. But I think as more and more people get vaccinated, I just have this sense that I think by July, I think that's when we really sort of turn a corner. And then hopefully, July, August, and the rest of the year, the economy just goes bonkers because I think people are, after being pent up for the last year, I know so many people who have said, you know what, I may not necessarily have the money, but I'm going to travel as soon as I can. I'm going to take that vacation that I've been putting off. I'm going to take that trip with the kids. We're going to go to Disney World. We're going to, the people are not going to put things off anymore because I think they've been reminded just how precious life is. And maybe that's the one silver lining out of all the hysterias that people say, okay, I'm going to make the most now of every day and not just, put things off until, someday in the future. Because what is the saying is that, life is what happens to you when you're busy making plans. People haven't been able to make plans for one reason or other, and I think people are set to do that. So I'd imagine the economy is I think the economy is going to explode, perhaps starting in the fall.
I think you made multiple great points that I just like to give my own highlight to. Is that number one, I do think that way more people have had this than has been assessed on two grounds. One is that the vast, vast, vast majority of people that have gotten this had no idea they had it because it has no effect on people. And that's something that's even less than the flu. Two is I believe that this started like at least 3 or 4 months earlier than was stated. Like I'm 99.999+% positive that I had this at the end of December of 2019, right at Christmas time. I mean, it's too much to go into, but it's just simple in that it was clear. It's clear looking back at it that me and several people around me all had it. The next thing is I do believe that the herd immunity is en route because of all that. Plus, it seems to me that the vaccine probably is already working. So you put all that together, and I'm reiterating this multiple times because I really believe it, and I want Republicans to think about this too, is that give Biden a chance on this stuff, and maybe, just maybe, he will be everybody's president. And because I think everybody at the end of the day would like to get back to basic normality. I just think that the different groups have different outlooks on what is occurring right now via this, pandemic or alleged pandemic. And some people are really, 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 scared into things. And other people have said, I don't believe anything anymore. And I think there's a commonality ground here that Biden can shape working with Republicans. And if there's one thing about what a lot of real conservatives don't like about the swamp Republicans that may be good, is that maybe they can and will work together with Biden and manage this, because out of all the problems we're having in our country, getting us back to normal, I think will make everybody sane again.
Well, one thing that is not normal, and that is, I want to talk a little bit of sports here for a second before we end the show. There's a kid by the name of Mario Del Vecchio who just won the state championship for his weight class in wrestling. And Ken, you were telling me he went 5-0 in the state tournament. This is your son, and I'm going to get rid of myself and get rid of you so we can put him up full in his picture there with his medal. I mean, he looks like, look, he's got pretty strong, but he's not the biggest kid. What was his weight class, and how did he do it?
Mario is the absolutely most phenomenally dedicated athlete that I know. I mean, my greatest claim to fame of athletics was being, as I've mentioned before, the top 5 in the country at one point in bench press. And I wrestled and I, played other sports, and Mario blows me out of the water. He's significantly higher level than me. And his greatest strength in wrestling is his physical strength and his mental strength. He also has some of the best wrestlers out there are masters of moves. They know like 100 different moves. Some of the other best wrestlers, they just mastered like 5 or 6 moves and people just can't defeat them. He's that guy. And he's a 90-pounder. He's in 6th grade. And the most phenomenal statistic in him being winning the states in Florida, so being state champion of Florida, is that out of over 150 kids that were in this tournament, only 2 kids, Mario was one of only 2 wrestlers who nobody scored a point on during the entire tournament. And the one other kid is an amazing wrestler. He had to win 4 matches to get there. Mario had to win 5. So he went 5-0, 4 pins, all in the first period, and a 15-0, what you call a technical fall, a technical pin. So I couldn't be more proud of the kid, and it's due, so large part to his just absolute dedication to the sport.
Well, for those of us who have children who are a little bit younger, Ken, how do we pass along, or how do we encourage that tireless work ethic that Mario has to be able to do this? Because we all know you can do whatever you want if you're willing to work hard, work smart, and sacrifice. Clearly, Mario is doing all 3. It's not easy to convince children sometimes that you really have to pay your dues if you want to be great at something. How'd you pass that along?
I just have to say, genetics is just one thing. Is that I'm obviously an extremely aggressive person, and Mario's aggressive by nature, but we're nice people too. And the thing that's beyond that, where he eclipsed me, I was like lazier with this stuff when I was younger. He just took up on it himself, and he said, I want to accomplish things, and he does it. Like he's gone out and he's acted in movies, and he does the same thing in football, and he gets straight A's because he just determines to work very hard at it. And I think the thing to do to encourage kids is just to explain to them, look how you're going to feel if you accomplish X, Y, and Z. Now, if somebody likes to play the violin, that's just as important as if you want to succeed in wrestling, or if you want to paint. And all you have to do, I just simply say to people are like, well, how do you write 1,500-page books? Well, I just sit down and I write them. There's no way to really teach that. What you can do is there's just various mechanisms to motivate kids to say, really, truly, like if you really determine that you want to do something, whatever it is that naturally comes to you, that you enjoy, that you have a desire for, just go out and do it. And whether, again, it's wrestling, or it's something in the arts, or it's something in science, or it's something in politics, whatever it is that excites you, just go after it. Because like you said earlier, we realize how precious and important things are, and go after those things that you love.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes is, if somebody tells you there's something you can't do, it's because they're not doing it themselves. Mario Del Vecchio, state champion of Florida. It is a remarkable and inspiring story for all of us, Ken. And congratulations to Mario, your better half. Incredible stuff. And great reminder to all of us that, if you are willing to sort of put in the effort and be disciplined about it. A buddy of mine, for example, he ran his first marathon at the age of 56. And he said the best advice he got was, get out there in your training and just put one foot in front of the other. Just keep doing it and don't give up. And he was able to run a marathon. It's amazing. Anyway, Ken, good luck with everything in Florida. Continued success to everybody in your family. Great talking with you. Thanks to everybody at HAPS for the live broadcast opportunity. And we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, Dave.